Good morning. We're here today to discuss the rising tide of violence in Suffolk County and how we can combat that. And when I become the District Attorney of Suffolk County, there's going to be two primary ways in which I'm going to combat that. First, you need action. Okay? Inaction is the enemy of progress. We need to act. So you need to act immediately to take these violent actors, to take individuals who would harm the individuals in our community. You need to take those people off the street as soon as possible. And if you look at the rising tide of violence in Suffolk County, it's primarily being caused by gang members, which isn't surprising because that's a trend that you see throughout the state and quite frankly throughout the country. So what you need to do is you need to have a centralized, dedicated gang unit. And I'm going to discuss the specifics of that and how through the course of my career I worked in such gang units with great success, and that's something that we don't have in Suffolk County and that we need. So the first thing is we need to act. And sort of as an example of this district attorney's inability or unwillingness to act, I use the example of gun cases. And I said in April of 2021, when I checked, that there were over 100 gun cases that I could find that had gone unindicted. And, you know, we need to stop and think about what that means for a second. So in Suffolk County, while there is this rise of violence, this rise of people using guns against other individuals, shooting guns in our communities, there are over 100 cases wherein the police, the men and women of the Suffolk County Police Department, risked their lives and arrested individuals with guns, individuals with unlicensed, unregistered handguns who are on the streets of our communities, presumably looking to use that gun illegally and against another person. Okay, so we need to act with that. And when I said that, when I made that statement was disputed. And I was told I needed to prove that. You know, notwithstanding the district attorney with a stroke of a key stroke, they could have given us that information. That's fine. I went out. I'm an individual with Google and a search mechanism. So that's what I did. And we put together those 100 cases, and we have those for you. And again, what that means is at one period of time during this period of time in Suffolk County when gun violence is on the rise, we have 100 defendants using guns that aren't being prosecuted. They're not being indicted. And this is important because you can't prosecute an individual in Suffolk County without first indicting that individual. It's the precursor to action. It's the precursor to prosecution. The other thing I would just note with regard to criminal possession of a weapon case, notwithstanding the disaster that bail reform has been, these cases are all bailable. So if you act, you could ask for bail, and those individuals could be held in on those charges. So first and foremost, that needs to be done. You need action. And then the second part of that plan is you do need a comprehensive gang unit. And what I'm talking about is a gang unit where that works hand in hand with a crime strategies unit, and that's another unit that has not been developed in the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office, which I will develop. And the crime strategies unit, what they will do is they will identify gang members, they will map out violence in our communities, and they will work hand in glove with our gang unit. And the way that works is you'll have these gangs that are identified, membership identified. You will have a dedicated team of ADAs working with detective investigators in my office, as well as the gang detectives and squad detectives in the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office, and they'll work together to identify all of these acts of violence, catalog them, and have immediately start the investigation of gang violence with a specific focus on individual gangs and individuals. And that way, you could gather all this evidence together, you could put it together in a gang conspiracy case, and you could marry the gang conspiracy with the violent acts, and that's the way you get substantial sentences. There are a couple of investigative tools that need to be utilized in order to do this, and the big one is ShotSpotter. Here in Suffolk County, we have not utilized ShotSpotter since, I believe, 2018. I know right now we're not utilizing it. And this is critical because when you look at what ShotSpotter does, in underserved communities, gunshots at night are unfortunately not an infrequent occurrence. They happen just about every night in our underserved communities. And when you're in those communities and there's a strong gang presence, and in light of criminal justice reform, where witnesses' IDs are being disclosed, people are nervous. People are hesitant to come forward with information. So oftentimes you see gunshots being fired in communities. It's not being reported. It's not being investigated. So if you have the ShotSpotter will pick that up and immediately report that to the police. If that gets immediately reported to the police, then the police could respond. They could recover whatever video is available. They could recover whatever ballistics is recovered. And then you could immediately start to analyze that in conjunction with your gang unit and your crime strategies unit, so you could act and you could move quickly. Just another example of technology that's not being utilized in Suffolk County is we have all of these cars, and as we know, with our cars, there is a computer in that car. There is a tremendous amount of information that is stored on that computer. And for instance, the route that a car takes, the speed that a car takes, what doors are open, all of what phones are used to access the Bluetooth inside the car, all of this is relevant in the gang context. So, and there is a program that can be purchased that will withdraw all of that information out of the cars. Currently, it's my understanding in Suffolk County does not possess such a program. So what I'm going to do when I become district attorney is I will use asset forfeiture funds, if necessary, to reactivate ShotSpotter and to use such computer programs to assist our police and our ADAs in investigating these cases promptly and bringing people off the street. There's also a whole host of other things that the district attorney's office should be leading with regard to these gang cases. There's jail calls that should be analyzed. There's cell site location data. There's social media that needs to be analyzed. And what you need to do, there's a tremendous amount of information in today's society. Too much for the police to do individually, and quite frankly, too much for the ADAs to do individually. So what a leader needs to do, a leader needs to bridge that gap by bringing the prosecutors together with the gang investigators to synthesize all this evidence and to move forward as quickly as possible. And just to underscore what I'm talking about here, I want to give it one example that, again, I've seen by sort of analyzing what's happening in Suffolk County, in my house. So there's an individual by the name of Talik Brown. He is a suspected member of the Bloods. He's 23 years old. In March 20th of 2021, he was arrested in Suffolk County. He was charged with reckless driving, reckless endangerment, leaving the scene of an accident with physical injury, and criminal possession of a weapon in the second degree. And the allegation in this case was he was driving in a car with a weapon. The police attempted to pull him over. A chase ensued. There was an accident. Talik Brown exited the vehicle. His gun was discharged. Fortunately, the police did a great job, and he was brought to justice. He was held on those charges. He was arraigned and held on those charges. On May 19th, 2021, he was released on bail. Less than a month later, on June 13th, once again, he was arrested by the police, charged with reckless driving, charged with speeding, and charged with driving a car without a license. In July 13th of 2021, he was arrested in Nassau County on felony drug charges. While all of this was going on, he's still out, and he goes back to Suffolk County Court on August 23rd, 2021, and he pleads guilty to an attempted criminal possession of a weapon off of the original weapon charge, as well as a third unrelated drug charge. So he's being charged with all that. He's once again released on bail pending that sentence. And that's important because on November 14th, 2021, there's a non-fatal shooting on Prospect Street in North Amityville. Now, Prospect Street in North Amityville is a known blood location and a location where Talik Brown is associated with. The next day, on September 15th, 2021, there's a retaliation shooting at 81 Center Avenue in Bayshore, and a BMW is located at that location. The police do a fantastic job. They put two and two together, and they go back to Prospect Avenue, where they see the BMW pull up, and they see the defendant, Talik Brown, get out of the car or in the location of the car with two other co-defendants. They arrest Talik Brown and his two co-defendants, and 3 guns are recovered. Now, those guns were presumably used in the drive-by shooting the day before. If we had a gang unit, we would be more agile. We would be able to indicate. We would already have the DA directing this investigation and going to that site, pulling the ballistics, comparing it to the guns that were recovered off of Talik Brown and his two co-defendants the next day. And that's what you need. You need a leader who's going to put together a centralized gang unit to synthesize all of this information immediately and as quickly as possible to stop the revolving door of justice and to bring these individuals off the streets as quick as possible. In the instance of Talik Brown, the police did a great job. The ADA is working hard, but they're working separate and apart from one another. What you need to do is you need to bring them in together in a centralized gang unit so you could have real-time investigations, and every moment that you keep these individuals on the street during an active gang war, you need to remove them, because at any instance there could be another shooting. So you need to remove them, not only for their safety, but for the safety of the community. So when I become district attorney, first and foremost, what I'm going to do is to stop this rising tide of violence, to stop the revolving door of justice in Suffolk County. Is we're going to move those violent actors who possess guns on our streets. We are going to indict those cases immediately, and we're going to have a program. We're not just going to allow them to plea bargain their way out. We're going to say, if you possess a gun in Suffolk County and you're arrested with that, you're going to have to plead guilty to a felony. You're going to have to go to jail, upstate incarceration on a felony charge. And we'll oppose all bail applications, and we won't reduce the charges if bail is involved. Of course, the second part to that is the centralized gang unit. And I think those two components put together could really help to stem the tide of violence in Suffolk County. Thank you. Jim, are there any questions?
So, Ray, is the personnel there to put these units together? In other words, are there existing detectives, the ADAs, or do you need to bring in new expertise, new talents?
Well, you need new leadership. You need not only at the DA, but you need other experienced gang prosecutors. And I will be bringing in experienced gang prosecutors that I've worked with during my career in both the U.S. Attorney's Office and in Brooklyn. And they'll help me to implement this program. So you need leadership. The DA's office keeps on getting new personnel. I think they have up to 200 ADAs. They recently got 20 or 30 new ADAs, which is great. You need those resources to fight crime, but you need to deploy those resources properly. And right now, there's not a centralized gang unit. So what you need to do is you need to identify all the gangs in Suffolk County. You need to assign ADAs to each individual set or a substructure. You need to assign investigators in both the DA's office and the PD to work as a team to combat that. That's not being done. All these cases are spread out, and there's no comprehensive plan to battle these gangs. And I'll tell you another thing with the Crime Strategies Unit. With ShotSpotter not being activated, that's helpful to only two classes of people: politicians and criminals, because the politicians can deny that there's an abundance of these shots occurring, and it also empowers defendants, because these gang incidences, they have a pattern to them. It starts out with a beef. It starts out with maybe drive-bys back and forth. If those drive-bys or if those aren't being investigated, the gangs become emboldened, the violence increases, and someone ends up dead. So every time a gun is fired in Suffolk County, that should be immediately investigated. Immediately investigated, not in a vacuum, but in the context of this gang culture that exists in Suffolk County, with investigators and ADAs with knowledge not only of the individual case, but of the gang activity as a whole. That's how you do it, because if you delay a day, a week, a month, each delay increases the chances that there's going to be a retaliation shooting or another act of violence. So you need to act.
To the technology, I mean, if we had it through 2018, what's stopping that? Is that a political decision? Is that fiscal decision? Is that a poor strategy?
I can't tell you whether it's any of those three things. To me, as a DA, to me as a leader, it doesn't matter. I have forfeiture funds. I'm able to use those forfeiture funds for legitimate law enforcement reasons. There's no more legitimate reason to use those forfeiture funds than to get these type of technologies. We need to have a real-time ability to use to have our gang prosecutors do cell site locations, so you could map these drive-by shootings and the routes that the various perpetrators take. But I mean, it can't be done a month, 6 months, or a year later. It has to be done as soon as possible, because this is an ongoing war. It's tit for tat. So you need to take these individuals off the street as soon as possible. So you can't borrow the technology from the New York State or the FBI or whatever. You need to have it available in your unit to be utilized.
And when you talk about identifying the gangs, I mean, everybody's heard of MS-13. Is that on the rise? Are the number of gangs on the rise? Are there new gangs arising now? Do we know? Did the current DA know? Do they have a handle on this at all?
I would say with regard to gangs, I mean, it's a fluid situation, and there's umbrella organizations. There's like Bloods, Crips, and then there's umbrella. That's the umbrella organization, and then there's subsets within that. And that's what it changes. And that's what the Crime Strategies Unit for, is to go out and investigate that, categorize that, and most importantly, to map that. Because what I've always said is, I don't get to determine where my next case is. The streets get to determine. So if you have an area in Wyandanch where there's 30 shootings, 6 non-fatal shootings, and 2 murders, well, guess what? That's where your next case is. You don't just just develop probable cause outside and apart from what's happening on the street. The street should dictate where your case is going. My opponent had a MS-13 investigation in which he eavesdropped on 215 phones over a 2-year period. He indicted a great number of people. We don't know what they pled guilty to. He hasn't disclosed that. But I looked at that indictment. There are no murders on that. There's no murders on that indictment. There's not even any shootings on that indictment. So, while you're dedicating all these tremendous resources, all the time, all the money to this 2-year investigation where there's no real violent acts, there's no shootings, there's no murders. All of this other stuff is happening. That's where it's too long. You have to be more agile because, you know, people who are engaged in the active and ongoing violence in our communities, they're not waiting 2 years. It's, you know, in the case of Talik Brown, there was a shooting in one area. The next night, there was another shooting. And the police were real smart. They went to the site of the first shooting thinking that the retaliators would show back up, and that's exactly what happened. So the police are doing a great job. They just need help. They need leadership. Thank you.